Hi everybody, Jessica here, functional nutritionist again. Let me get into present mode here and we will get started. Okay, things are moving a little bit slower. Sorry about that. Let me move my face. Okay, all right. So, today for our nutritional power hour, we are going to be discussing nutrition myths and facts. I thought this was kind of a fun topic because there's so many things out there on Google. Maybe you hear from friends or family, and it can really create chaos in your mind about what you feel is good versus what you feel is bad. And I really want to kind of highlight some of the big ones out there and break through those so you guys know what the real content is behind it and what we can kind of really take into account versus what we can kind of put off to the side as maybe not reliable information. So with that being said, we are first going to discuss, so what we're going to try to do is really, separate nutrition myths from facts. And then I want to kind of identify some nutrition red flags that you can keep an eye out for, establish where we can really find credible nutrition information, and then just kind of giving you a couple options for preparing nutrient-dense meals and snacks that support optimal health. Alrighty, so the first things that we really need to, focus on is that, there's a couple of factors that do influence what we eat. And some of those things are tastes and preferences. Obviously, we all have foods that we prefer versus ones that we don't. And that's okay. And a lot of the times it may not be a specific food. Like in this picture, you see you've got this savory burger and then you've got this sweet apple. Maybe savory is something that you really enjoy and that's why you crave more of this savory cheeseburger. Well, we can still have nutrient-dense meals that are savory that aren't necessarily processed like this or, a better option for you. So taste and preferences is one thing. Certainly cultural traditions. So certain foods you can eat versus can't eat based on your religious background or cultural aspects. Budgets is a big one. People think that they can't afford to eat healthy. And so that really can be a barrier as far as what influences people to buy certain foods versus others or eat a certain way. Values, accessibility. I have found, I'm in California and I work with, patients from all over the world or clients from all over the world. I had a client in Australia. I've had clients on the East Coast, the Midwest, the West Coast. And there really is a shift in accessibility as far as certain brands or foods that is available, things that are, seasonal. And so those are things that need to be taken into account. Certainly convenience, how close is a store to you to get these things? Is there McDonald's right around the corner, whereas your grocery store is a half hour away? So all of those things are things that can influence what we eat. And of course, friends and family. Friends and family is probably one of the biggest aspects that impact your decision making when it comes to food and what you're putting in your body. And so a lot of times they may influence you to Google something on the internet and what you're finding to be true. They may be, what your eating patterns look like throughout the day. So these are all really big aspects of what can impact our day-to-day decisions on food choices. But one of the main things to remember is that I may go through here and separate, myths from facts, but, it's not individualized. And so anytime you're really wanting to seek guidance on food support, nutrition, things that are going to benefit you and your health goals, as always, it's very much recommended to either talk with your, healthcare professional, whether it's your practitioner or your nutritionist, whoever that person may be. Okay, so we're going to go through top 10 nutritional myths. And one of the first ones here. So carbohydrates cause weight gain. This is a big one. People avoid carbs all the time. I work with clients all the time that say, oh, I really try to avoid carbs because I just know they're bad for me and they're going to make me gain weight. And so really kind of getting to the bottom of this myth, it is a myth because weight gain is much more complex than just one food component. I can't tell you how many times I've worked with people that have insulin resistance, high stress, hormonal imbalances, all things that impact the way our body holds, loses, weight. And so while certain foods can enhance these things in, areas, it's not a main cause of weight gain. So really understanding that weight gain is complex, or it's never just like carbohydrates is the sole purpose of that. There's never one food or nutrient that can really cause weight gain. And ideally, high quality carbohydrates are a really important part of our balanced nutritional approach. Even if weight loss is a goal, it's really just about what carbohydrates you're choosing. If you're choosing to go get French fries at a fast food restaurant, yes, those are obviously not the best choice. But if you're trying to do maybe some brown rice with a meal, that's not a bad choice. It's got good fiber. It helps with gut motility. It's, carbohydrates are fuel for our system. So those are things to really take into account, is that, carbohydrates are not the enemy here. There's usually a lot more going on of why there's weight gain in the first place, and whether it's physiological or maybe the food choices that you're making when it comes down to specific carbohydrates. And so just to kind of give you some more information, so, carbohydrates fuel high intensity movement, and they also support recovery. So anybody that's doing like exercise, daily strenuous movement, we need carbohydrates to fuel our system. It's also important for thyroid function. It's important for our sex hormones like testosterone, ovulation in women, and it can also help you manage cortisol, which is our stress hormone. And indirectly can even improve your sleep. So there's a lot of our bodily functions that actually require carbohydrates. And so that's something we really need to take into account, is that, yes, a lot of people make this connection with weight gain, but look at all the things that carbohydrates does for our body. And if you're not eating carbs because you're worried about weight gain, some of these other aspects, maybe thyroid function, cortisol levels, those things not being fueled with the proper carbohydrates for functioning can also impact your weight. So it's actually not doing your body any good to, do these things. Okay, myth number 2. Eating whole eggs is unhealthy. I have quite a few clients that, work on cholesterol, trying to get their cholesterol down. And this, again, is something that is complex. A lot of people have higher cholesterol because of other things that have nothing to do with food. It could be stress or lifestyle related. And so one of the big things is they used to have on the what am I thinking of, resources when you would Google, if you're supposed to have eggs or not. The FDA and other food resources like that were saying that you shouldn't have more than, I think, 3 eggs per week or something like that because of the cholesterol impact it could have on your body. But what we've found actually since that time, it's been a long time since that was published, we've actually found that eating whole eggs isn't unhealthy. Eating foods that are high in saturated fat affect blood cholesterol more than foods high in dietary cholesterol. So it's really making that, deciphering that, difference there, that you could eat, 6 to 7 whole eggs per week and choose proteins that are low in saturated fat, like beans, lentils, and tofu. And those things aren't going to really impact your dietary or your blood cholesterol. It's some of these other foods that are really high in saturated fats and not the best food choices. Those are affecting your cholesterol, not eating whole eggs. And so another thing to kind of be mindful of is that, chicken eggs, they're an affordable source of protein. They've got a ton of other nutrients. They're also naturally high in cholesterol, but the cholesterol in eggs doesn't seem, like I said, to raise cholesterol levels the way some other foods, such as those as high in trans fat and saturated fats do. And so a lot of it could also be what people typically pair eggs with. I think we commonly think, oh, eggs, it's been ingrained in us from past research that has now been developed and expanded on, but we think that eggs are unhealthy when really it could be foods that we pair with eggs. Maybe people are eating bacon, sausage, ham. Those are things that can actually increase heart disease risk and cholesterol, and that has that high saturated fat content. So again, a lot of different factors play a part. And so when you Google something, you want to make sure you're really thinking of all the avenues and aspects, because there's a lot more going on than just a simple, question of, is eating whole eggs unhealthy? As you can see, it's, well, what are you pairing with the eggs? What other foods are you eating? It's not the eggs themselves. And so eggs are a healthy, high protein source animal food, and definitely don't need to be avoided for cholesterol purposes. All right, number 3, foods with gluten are unhealthy. This is a big one, especially because I work with a lot of clients that have autoimmune conditions, or they just really do feel better not eating gluten. Maybe they have gluten sensitivity or celiac. And so I think this is a really good one to decipher. It's not that gluten is unhealthy for everybody, but it can be a trigger for specific individuals. So there are people that have different, medical conditions that really do need to follow a gluten-free diet. But for people without those conditions, gluten-containing foods can actually be part of a healthy diet. And so it's really, again, that individualized approach that if you have, autoimmunity, typically autoimmunity is one that is usually recommended to try to avoid gluten. And I'll talk to you about that on the next slide. And then, like I said, there's other people that don't have autoimmune conditions, but maybe they try an elimination style diet and they reintroduce gluten back in and they find, wow, I really felt terrible when I tried gluten again. Those are people that might be gluten sensitive, and they could avoid gluten. But if you're someone that tolerates it well, you don't notice a difference without it, there's actually nutritional benefit to gluten-containing products. And so when I was talking about autoimmunity, so why this is so commonly spread that gluten is unhealthy for everybody is because what happens is zonulin is something within our digestive tract that actually regulates the permeability of our intestinal lining. So I know I've talked about this in the past in other informational sessions, but you've got your intestinal lining that you want all your tight junctions and all your cells really close together, so you're not letting through pathogens, bacteria, undigested food. And so that's the permeability we're talking about. Good poor permeability would mean that those tight junctions are separating. We're letting through bad bacteria, undigested foods, and what happens is our immune cells, 70% or more of our immune cells are past that intestinal barrier. So what happens is zonulin, it regulates the permeability of that digestive tract, and it helps really fight off pathogens that enter into the gut. In people with things like celiac, gluten sensitivity, or other autoimmune conditions where your immune system is already overreactive, gluten can trigger an overproduction of zonulin, which has implications for the autoimmune system and can, exacerbate autoimmune or even lead into it in susceptible individuals. So it's not that it's bad for everybody, but because of this mechanism behind the zonulin, the permeability aspects and how it regulates that in the intestine, and the importance that we know as far as our immune system, a majority of it being hosted within the gut, this is kind of where that comes back to as far as gluten being unhealthy. So I hope that kind of clarifies a bit that it's not unhealthy for everybody, but it can be a common trigger for people. Okay. Myth number 4. Okay, a vegetarian diet does not have enough protein. I have worked with so many people that want to do more plant-based, but they're worried about protein intake. Many plant foods have plenty of adequate protein within them. So I've listed some here. We've got beans, lentils, so a lot of the legume family, soy products like tofu, edamame, nuts and seeds. I do think that it does take some adjustment when people are switching from an animal to a plant-based nutritional approach, but you certainly can get enough of your protein needs within that. And there's certain, like there's certain animal foods that you'll get your complete, essential amino acids within those. Amino acids are proteins. And then there's plant foods where you kind of have to food combine to get those. And so it's not necessarily that you can't get enough protein. It's being able to know that not one plant protein is going to provide you with all 9 essential amino acids. You may have to combine certain things like whole grains and nuts and seeds, or, something like that. And that's why if you do tend to switch to that approach, it can be helpful to kind of get help from your practitioner or your nutritionist of some sort, just to make sure you're understanding the foods to combine and the foods to eat to make sure you're getting enough adequate nutrients. But it's certainly plausible and doable from a vegetarian perspective. And so I've listed here some, I'm sorry, I think that, there we go, some foods that are plant-based and they've got quite enough protein content. So if you look at tempeh, which is a fermented soy product, within 100 grams or 20 grams of protein in a serving. Beans, 20 grams. This again, looking at gluten products. If you're not sensitive to gluten, you can have that, and it actually has good protein content. Tofu. And then even some of the vegetables, like if you go down and see or whole grains and vegetables, but whole grains have 9 to 7 grams. Broccoli has 3 grams, so not a lot, but you're still getting protein content from even vegetable sources, which most people don't relate to. They just think it's a carbohydrate. And then there's certain milk products. So I wanted to show you the difference. So soy milk has similar protein content to that of cow's milk. So you're getting about 8 to 10 grams in a serving. Whereas almond, coconut, and hemp milk are much lower. So if you are someone that's looking for more of a protein-rich, dairy alternative in the milk category, then soy milk is very comparable to cow's milk. If tolerated. So I just wanted to give you, an idea of what these could look like and different options that you definitely can get enough protein from a plant-based approach. Okay. Myth number 5, you should only eat between the hours of 12 and 8 p.m. This is something that I thought was it made me laugh a little bit because I didn't know this was a myth. I was looking up, a lot of common myths on the internet, and this is one that popped up pretty frequently. So I thought I should address it because maybe this is something that's out there a lot, and I certainly don't want that to be the case. There is no one way of eating for everybody. And I think I definitely stress that with each client that I work with. I know the practitioners that I work alongside are always very behind that approach as well. You can have a healthy diet, nutritional approach at eating at different times of the day. And it is going to look different for everybody because what we have to realize is, again, there's not just one approach that we're looking at. It's not like we're just looking at, okay, you can only eat during these time frames. We're also looking at, okay, why are we having you eat behind these time frames? Are you doing it because you have insulin resistance? Are you doing it because your blood sugar is dropping too low at night? What does that look like for you? Are you intermittent fasting because your gut needs a break? So there's a lot of other things that go into it than just the simplicity of eat during these times of the day. And there's certainly people out there that, like I said, may benefit from an eating schedule where others really just want to focus on intuitive eating and eating based on when they feel their hunger and fullness cues. So again, it's very, very different for everybody. This is not something that I definitely don't want people to follow this, that you should only eat during those time frames. Myth number 6, snacking is unhealthy. I haven't ran into this too much with clients. I think if anything, I encourage snacking a lot, and I think that people aren't as used to eating as often as I try to recommend. And so I do think it's an adjustment for people. And I don't know if it's necessarily the mindset that they think snacking is unhealthy, or if they just feel like they shouldn't be eating as much as they're eating based on their certain health goals. And so snacking is not unhealthy. I'm just going to break that barrier right there. Snacking, it helps curb our hunger. It keeps us properly fueled between meals. It keeps our blood sugar stable. And it's all really about balance. I mean, when we look at snacks, you know, we've got our main meals, our breakfast, lunch, and dinner. But in between those, we should be having snacks. And so the snacking aspects, I think, is where people go wrong, is because maybe it's deemed unhealthy because of the snack choices that people are choosing. And so we still want to have that balance and nutrient density even within our snacks. And so I did put together some examples here on the next page. So, balance is key. And so we really want to make sure that, you're not having naked carbs, and carbs are anything from what we traditionally think of as carbs, like those root vegetables, carrots, potato chips, French fries. It could be grains, so bread, quinoa, rice, oats. But it can also be vegetables and fruits. I think a lot of people don't make that connection. So again, balance is key. What we really want to have is a good balance of any type of carb with a healthy protein or fat. If you're having a healthy protein or fat by itself, that's fine, but we don't want to ever have naked carbs. So looking at these examples, you've got a resistant starch, which a carbohydrate with the plantain chips. You're pairing that with hummus or guacamole because those are healthy proteins and fats. You could do a handful of mixed nuts because those are just healthy fats. Berries are a carbohydrate, so you would want to pair that with maybe a nut like almonds, a healthy fat. Same thing with vegetables. If you want to do like celery sticks, cucumbers, carrots, anything like that, those are still a carbohydrate. So you still want to make sure you're pairing those properly with like hummus or guacamole again. So just giving you guys an idea that balance is key in all aspects of life, and that also goes into snacking. So snacking is not unhealthy. We need that. It fuels our system. It keeps our blood sugar stable, but how we're snacking can really decipher whether it's healthy or unhealthy. Okay, myth number 7, juicing or cleansing is required to detox. I think this is a big one out there because a lot of people are hearing about those trends of people detoxing, and they're doing it through juicing or cleansing for like 3 days, not eating anything. And it is not required to detox. We'll just, keep it simple. There are things that juicing or cleansing can be beneficial for maybe someone who their gut needs a break, things like that. But in order for detox, it is not required. We have a lot of different natural mechanisms within our body that help us detox. The liver, the kidneys, skin, our lungs. These things are all in our system to help our body detox naturally. And so what we really want to focus on is that, you don't have to juice or cleanse. There's a lot of foods out there that can naturally support and enhance that. Making sure you're giving the liver, the kidneys, all these bodily processes what they need for proper detox. So really eating whole, plant-based foods that have a lot of fiber, and adequate amounts of food to really provide energy. And so here's some, from the Institute for Functional Medicine, if we look at some of their, supporting leafy greens that they mention, you could literally fill your plate with some of these and do a salad. And these are all leafy greens that are rich in detox qualities. So bok choy, cilantro, collard greens, mustard turnips, microgreens, parsley, radicchio. Like these are things you could all literally throw into a bowl and eat together as like a salad, and you'd be like having the most epic detox meal that you could. So it's not required for juicing or cleansing to detox. I think it's definitely a fad out there that has been on the rise. But I really wanted to mention that there's a lot of foods that we can eat without not eating at all or cleansing that can help with detox just as much. All right, myth number 8, consuming vitamin C prevents colds. This is a big one. I think a lot of people think like, oh, I'm getting sick, I just need to pop vitamin C, it's going to help me. Or my family member's sick, I need to, get all my nutrients in. That is not a bad thing to think. We should be doing that anyways. We should be trying to give our body the nutrients on a daily basis, not just when someone around us might be sick or we need to prevent a cold. But consuming vitamin C does not prevent colds. What it really does is it can actually shorten the duration of a common cold, but let me go to the next slide here and kind of explain. So the reason people might think this is because vitamin C is highly concentrated in our immune cells, but it's also quickly depleted during an infection. So vitamin C deficiency can weaken the immune system and it increases the risk of infections. So for that reason, getting enough vitamin C during an infection is it's a good idea. But it doesn't necessarily prevent a cold or an infection. It just helps boost our immune system. So the immune system is supporting that. So it's an antioxidant. So it's kind of yes and no. It can help your immune system fight things off and really build up a tolerance to certain infections or colds, things like that. But it doesn't necessarily prevent a cold. And so, again, you can certainly help your body enhance this to prevent the length and duration of a cold because it'll support your immune system to get back to healing and really fighting this thing off. But we should be doing that anyways, and so there's certain foods that are rich in vitamin C. I just put a couple down here as, to show you some diversity, but certain fruits like plums and cherries, guava, things like chili peppers, parsley, kale, mustard, spinach. I don't know if you've ever seen, we have out here, they have little immunity shots and they'll be like lemon, ginger, and cayenne. And those things, I've taken them sometimes. They're just like a little shot you take and they burn so bad with the cayenne, but a lot of those things have immune supportive effects. And so that's why they're like immunity shots. And a lot of times I'll take them if I'm starting to feel sick. Again, not to prevent a sickness, but to help boost my immune system to help fight things off. Okay. Myth number 9, frozen produce is not as healthy as fresh produce. This is a tricky one because it's not true. Frozen produce is frozen at peak ripeness and it's just as nutritious as fresh produce to some extent. So if we look at vegetables, I think most all vegetables, I believe, are actually boiled prior to being frozen because they help hold the texture and don't get that mushiness and things like that. And so when we boil vegetables, we do lose some of the nutritional value when we put them in hot water. And so not all of it, but some of it. And so vegetables are one that do have some nutrient loss when they're frozen simply because of that fact. But they do still have a lot of nutrients within it. It's just a small amount that's lost. Things like berries, so frozen berries and things like that. I mean, obviously we're not boiling berries before we freeze them. So all of those still have their nutrient density when they're frozen. So the only difference is the vegetables versus fruit. So for people that are really wanting to like meal prep or have the ease to not have to slice and dice all their vegetables every night, or maybe they don't eat them quickly enough and they're going bad in their fridge, so they want to opt for frozen, you're fine to have the frozen. They're just as healthy. You're still getting those nutrients. There is a small loss on the vegetable side of things, but it's not enough to really make an impact. I'd rather you go with something that is going to be easy for you to prepare, easy for you to whip up to where you are actually eating vegetables rather than just completely avoiding altogether because you don't want to cut or prep anything or because you feel like they're not going to be as beneficial for you. So we'll just, throw that out right now. All right, and then lastly, myth number 10, low fat or fat-free products are healthier choices. Okay, so this is a big one because a lot of people opt for these at the store. And so, many products will have that label on there. They'll say low fat or fat-free. But what we have to realize is any time something is taken out, something has to be added back in to keep the stability of that product. And then it's the same thing with things like, I talk to clients about this all the time with gluten-free products. If you go to get a gluten-free product, you've got to be careful. There's probably a ton of added sugar and sodium in there because what they do is they need to kind of mimic what the gluten did, and so they have to replace it with something. And it's the same for low-fat or fat-free products. It can have a lot of added sugar, sodium. They need to make up for that flavor loss and also the texture and consistency of the product. And so there is that fine line with really trying to find good quality products that are either gluten-free or lower fat, things like that, which can be challenging with things that are out there on the market. So, and also something we have to realize is that, in actuality, fat helps us keep, it helps with satiety. So it helps us stay full for longer, which is really, really good for us. And so choosing something that's fat-free to reduce calories can actually backfire because you may be snacking soon after because it's not going to be helping. It doesn't have that fat content to really hold your satiety for too long. So it's kind of, it's not necessarily the best option for you. Again, there are some people that might benefit. I know people that have hypertension, like the DASH diet and things like that, do tend to opt for low-fat options. So it's, again, going to be individualized for everybody, but I just wanted to, for a generalized myth that low-fat and fat-free products are not always healthier choices for everybody, and we really have to watch out for these additional ingredients. All right. So some red flags for nutrition myths. So things that you can really look out for is certain .com sites. So unless you have a resource that is, a scientific study that was done or anything that really has like backed up resources, you want to be careful with. A lot of things like blogs or personal websites, unless they really resource and put in the information of where they got their information from, you really want to be careful with things like that because that's where you're going to get a lot of the false information or things that just haven't been adequately backed behind research that have been proven. And then another thing is, the friends and families aspect. So, our friends and families are always there to help us. Of course, they want to give their insight into maybe something that worked for them or something that they read. But we also have to realize that we are very individualized as people. And even from our moms or our dads or our friends, the same thing that works for them may not work for us. And we also need to understand that unless they really have the qualifications, they are doing just as what everybody else is doing, is probably Googling or looking at things. So unless they really have like the resources to show you and things like that, you just want to, be thankful for their thoughts and help and advice, but also take it with a grain of salt and really individualize the information to yourself and really go above and beyond to look a little bit deeper on your own. Any type of websites or stores that sell products, obviously, you don't want to fall into any like marketing gimmicks, just like down below. So like Get Thin Quick or celebrity spokesperson, things like that. We don't want to, those are just marketing tools. And then certainly programs that restrict entire food groups. I mean, even when we work with clients on elimination diets, it's very, very short term because those are things that are not sustainable and they're not good for our systems. So just some things to look out for there. And then, useful ways to find more credible nutrition info is, we talked about .com websites. So instead, maybe look for websites that have that .edu at the end, which means it's an educational resource. .gov, which would be something more government backed, and .org sources. You really want to look for, the authors with credentials, what their background is, when was this published. If it was something from 1970, there's probably something that's new out there that's a little bit more credible. And so maybe asking your doctor or healthcare professional saying, hey, I found this information. Like, what are your thoughts? Do you know anything about it? And maybe they have some resources they can share with you to really allow for credibility behind that question. And also be open to new ideas. We're learning things, the science field, the medical, nutrition, like everything in that aspect that deals with health and wellness is expanding on a daily basis. So there's always new information out there, new ideas. So really being open to that is going to be beneficial. All right, so those were the myths and facts. I hope that was helpful for you guys. I had fun with that one because it's fun for me to kind of be like, this is not true. Let's kind of focus in. And so I did want to just share with you guys, I actually do have some great new offerings coming out. I've worked with many clients on meal planning aspects, and it's something that is, I wasn't skeptical of. I really try to allow for the flexibility for me to support a client, but also I want the client to be able to build on their creativity as well. And so it wasn't something that I had at the forefront. But what I'm noticing is as I work with more and more clients, I'm noticing that a lot of us need that basic support, whether it's just for a month or maybe 6 months. We need that ability to have different recipe options, or the ease for us to be like, okay, I want these recipes and here's a grocery list for you. So I have teamed up with a software that I'm able to really individualize and create meal plans for clients. And it's really great because they can be geared towards your specific individual health goals. And so there's different options. I mean, we can do a full, you get a full week's worth of meal planning, or it could be 3 to 4 days a week, and then you can have the creative aspects on your own for the rest of the week. So there's really that flexibility there. But the great thing is that it also comes with not only the full recipe, but it also allows for the ability to be like, okay, on Monday, you're going to create 4 servings of this, and then you're going to notice on Wednesday and Friday, you're having that as leftovers. So it really cuts down on the meal prep and meal planning to where I'm giving you a recipe, but you're also knowing like, okay, I'm going to eat this later on in the week, and you don't have to have like a new recipe every single day. So it's really built for ease, flexibility, but really getting all those nutrient-dense foods into our body that really fuel our health. And then it comes with, you can actually pick and choose days that you want to go grocery shopping for. So if you only want like Monday and Tuesday, you can produce a grocery list. You can even take off items you already have in your pantry, and then you've got your full resource to take with you to the store. So it's really meant to create ease for clients and accessibility. So I just wanted to share that. I do have a 3-day free trial that you can kind of sign up for and just see how it works. So if it's something that you do want to kind of trial out and see, please let me know. There's the option, if you do really like it, it's $29 per month for a subscription. And what happens is you get a weekly food list and recipe guides and all that, the grocery list, all sent to your email every week. And so you'll get resources weekly that are sent to you in that regard, and you can cancel at any time. You're not tied into anything. But I just wanted to let you know it was something I was excited about, and I feel like I've already had a couple of clients sign up and work with it and gotten really great feedback from it. So I wanted to share it with all of you. But that is it for tonight, you guys. I'm sorry I went a little bit over, but I guess exciting topics and things to review together. And I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your week, and I'll see you next time.